You're tuned in to 98.4 FM, or whatever's left of it. My name is Shane Walker, speaking from what used to be the emergency booth at WQNR here in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I don't know how long this backup generator is going to last, but it's still kicking out enough power to keep this old transmitter warm, and as long as it holds on, I'll keep talking. The clock on the wall stopped earlier today, but my watch says it's just past 11:40 p.m. The air outside feels colder than it should be for late October, and there's this heaviness in it, like breathing through a wet cloth. The city used to hum at this hour, trucks near the interstate, the late trains, people outside bars yelling at each other for no reason. Tonight, there's nothing. Just the wind scraping at broken glass somewhere down the street and that buzzing sound the power lines make when they're hanging too low. I keep checking the window even though it's dark out there and I can't see much. Not directly anyway. Pretend you've just connected to this frequency. What do you tell the world in 15 seconds? What's the last thing you saw? Smoke? Silence? Soldiers? Comment your report like we're logging every broadcast. I don't know who's still listening. I don't even know how far this signal's reaching. The main antenna went out when the power grid buckled earlier, and I had to switch to the rooftop relay. You're tuned in to 98.4 FM, or whatever's left of it. My name is Shane Walker, speaking from what used to be the emergency booth at WQNR here in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I don't know how long this backup generator is going to last, but it's still kicking out enough power to keep this old transmitter warm, and as long as it holds on, I'll keep talking. The clock on the wall stopped earlier today, but my watch says it's just past 11:40 p.m. The air outside feels colder than it should be for late October, and there's this heaviness in it, like breathing through a wet cloth. The city used to hum at this hour, trucks near the interstate, the late trains, people outside bars yelling at each other for no reason. Tonight, there's nothing. Just the wind scraping at broken glass somewhere down the street and that buzzing sound the power lines make when they're hanging too low. I keep checking the window even though it's dark out there and I can't see much. Not directly anyway. Pretend you've just connected to this frequency. What do you tell the world in 15 seconds? What's the last thing you saw? Smoke? Silence? Soldiers? Comment your report like we're logging every broadcast. I don't know who's still listening. I don't even know how far this signal's reaching. The main antenna went out when the power grid buckled earlier, and I had to switch to the rooftop relay. The smaller and weaker, but from what I can tell, it's still pushing through the static. If you're out there anywhere within a few miles and your radio still works, I hope this gives you something to hold on to in the dark. It's strange how many things we took for granted. Lights, phones, the sound of other people. Now it feels like those things were part of some other world that stopped existing earlier tonight. People keep asking what happened. Truth is, I don't fully know. But I can tell you what I saw because it started right here, right in front of the station, right on Front Street, long before anyone had words for it. It was around 7:15 p.m. when the first thing felt off. I was finishing a pre-recorded segment, nothing special, just some filler about weekend traffic. The monitors flashed like they do when the signal stutters, but nothing else seemed wrong, so I kept going. Then the building shook, lightly at first. Not like an earthquake, more like a deep, low vibration under the floorboards. At first I thought it was another freight train cutting across the west side of the river. But trains don't shake the walls here. Trains don't make the lights flicker like someone was breathing on the power lines. I looked through the glass into the hallway, and the emergency lights were pulsing on and off, but not at the right speed. They were supposed to flash slowly, evenly, in case of backup activation. Instead, they blinked fast, almost nervous, like they were scared. I know lights don't get scared, but it's the only word that fits. I sat still for a moment, waiting for an alarm, or at least a call from the station manager, but nothing came. My phone had no signal. Not weak signal. No signal at all. 0 bars. The entire LTE icon just vanished. The screen froze for a second before rebooting on its own. When it came back, it was empty again. I could hear shouting from outside. Not panic yet. More like confusion. People asking each other what was going on. Car horns beeping. A lot of engines revving like folks were trying to move but couldn't. I opened the studio door to the lobby to get a better look through the front windows, and that's when I saw the first set of headlights stop moving. They didn't dim. They didn't blink. They just froze like someone hit pause on the entire street. Engines shut off one by one, then all at once, and the whole block went dead silent. Not the kind of silence where things are calm. The kind that presses against your ears and makes you feel like you're underwater. Then the streetlights blew out. All of them. Not one at a time, every single one in the same instant. A ripple of sparks shot upward like fireflies being yanked into the sky. For about 2 seconds, everything turned pitch black. And once my eyes started to adjust, that's when I noticed something else in the windows. Not outside. In the glass. In the reflection. Someone was standing behind me. I spun around so fast I slipped on the floor, but the hallway was empty. I know how that sounds. Maybe it was just the emergency lights playing tricks on the glass. Maybe my brain filled in the shape of a person because that's what minds do when scared. But I swear on everything I've got left that the reflection wasn't my own. It was taller, thinner, and its shoulders bent at an angle that didn't look right. Like it didn't understand how bones were supposed to sit under skin. I didn't want to stay in the hallway anymore, so I went back to the studio and shut the door, even though shutting a thin door doesn't do much against anything real. The power surged again, harder this time. The monitors popped and everything went dark. I sat there in the faint red glow of the exit sign for what felt like forever, wondering if I was alone in the building. Wondering if the thing I saw in the reflection was actually there behind the glass or somewhere else in the room. I kept my eyes on the dark corners, watching for movement, trying not to breathe too loud. I've never been afraid of the dark before. Not once in my 32 years. Tonight I felt like a kid again, terrified of whatever hides where the light doesn't reach. When the backup kicked in, I swear I heard something move in the vents overhead. A scraping, dragging sound. Slow, like something pulling itself closer. I grabbed the first heavy thing I could find, a metal tripod we use for the old mic stand, and held it like a bat. I didn't want to swing it. I didn't want to find out what I was swinging at. I just needed something that made me feel less helpless. I tried the landline in the studio, but it was dead too. Not even static. Just a hollow click when I picked up the receiver. The next 15 minutes were chaos outside. I could hear tires skidding, metal crunching, people screaming. A car must have rolled into another when the engine cut out because I heard a crash followed by someone yelling in pain. But no one helped them. People stopped helping each other fast. Panic takes that out of you, I guess. Or maybe everyone saw something in the dark that made them too scared to get close to anyone else. The weirdest part, and I still don't know how to explain this, was what kept happening every time someone passed a reflective surface. Glass, metal, a car window, even puddles on the street. People kept jumping away from their own reflections like something was wrong with them. A woman screamed hysterically at a store window. A man threw his backpack at the side of a bus and ran like his life depended on it. And I kept seeing shapes behind reflections that didn't match the people standing there. Not all the time, just quick flashes. Too quick to be sure. Tall shadows, thin silhouettes, heads tilted the wrong way. I'm not saying they were alive. I'm not saying they were creatures. But whatever those shapes were, they weren't normal. Around 8 p.m., the whole city grid failed. All of it. Downtown went black. The bridges went dark. Even the hospitals lost power, and they should have been on emergency lines. The sound of generators was everywhere at first, those deep chugging engines, but one by one those started dying too. The power didn't go out like a simple blackout. It felt like something was draining the electricity, sucking it dry until the machines choked and died. Somewhere past 8:30, I heard the military helicopters. At least 4 of them. I thought they were coming to help, but the moment they passed over the river, their rotors slowed in midair like someone was squeezing the speed out of them. One of them barely made it to the far side of the city before the engine cut out. I heard the crash. The thud traveled through the ground like thunder. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just a power outage. I know a retired engineer named Calvin Rhodes who lives a few blocks from here. He used to work with the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency before he retired. He's the kind of guy who notices things other people don't. Around 9:10, he managed to make it to the station. Don't ask me how, I still don't know. He was shaking so hard I thought he'd collapse. He kept saying, "It's not natural, Shane. It's not a failure. Something is pulling charge from everything. It's feeding on it." He said feeding like he'd seen it with his own eyes. I didn't want to ask him what that meant. He noticed how the reflections outside behaved and said he'd seen the same thing on his way here. Every time he passed a window, he saw something else looking back. Not himself. Something darker. Something cashing shape like heat ripples. He didn't want to repeat what he saw in the glass door of the fire station. Calvin thought it might be some kind of field, electromagnetic, but not like anything he'd studied. He said the patterns on the grid failure weren't random. He said it looked like the power was collapsing inward toward a center point, not outward from a malfunction. Like something was drawing it in. Something invisible. Something with purpose. I asked him what could do that. He didn't answer. He just kept rubbing his arms like he was freezing even though the room wasn't cold. At around 10:40, he left to check on his daughter. He said he'd come back. He hasn't. Phones still don't work. Cell towers are down. The police radio is only static. The emergency broadcast system played once about an hour ago. A single tone broken like the signal was struggling to get through. Then nothing. The city feels emptied out. Not in the way you notice after a storm, but in a way that makes you think people didn't just run. Like they were swallowed by the dark. I don't know what those shapes are. I don't know why they only show up in reflections, or why they seem clearer when things get quiet. All I know is I keep catching something in the studio glass that isn't me. Every few minutes. In the corner. Behind my shoulder. When I move, it doesn't. When I turn to look, there's nothing there. But the glass remembers. If you're still listening, keep your lights low. Stay away from mirrors and windows. Cover anything that reflects. If you don't, you might see something standing behind you, and by the time you turn around, it might be gone. But you'll still feel like it's close. Closer each time. The air is getting colder again. The generator is making a sound I don't like. A slow pulse, like it's struggling to breathe. I'm going to keep talking as long as it holds. And I'm going to tell you everything that happened after 11 o'clock. Everything I've seen since the reflections started moving on their own. This is only the beginning. The generator dipped again, like it was choking on the dark. The lights in the booth flickered and the hum of the transmitter thinned out for a moment, and I swear my heart just stopped with it. Every time the power stutters, I feel like the world is trying to close its hand around my throat. I keep tapping the side of the console out of habit, like tapping it will convince the power to stay on. But I know it doesn't work like that. Machines don't listen. Not anymore. Maybe they're too tired. Or maybe whatever's out there is draining them faster each hour. I've started counting the seconds between the flickers just to keep myself grounded. The intervals are getting shorter. That can't be good. I want to go back to something Calvin told me before he left. He was sweating through his jacket, shaking like he had a fever, even though the room was cold enough that I could see my breath fogging a little in front of my face. He kept saying he felt something pressure-like in the air, something heavy but invisible, something that made his ears pop. He said, "It's not just the electricity, Shane. It's not only the power. It's pulling more than that. It's like it wants heat, charge, life, maybe even thoughts." The last part made no sense to me. Thoughts? How do you drain thoughts? But he looked dead serious, and he wasn't the type to exaggerate. I'm trying to forget the way he kept glancing at the studio window even though the blinds were half shut. Every time he caught his own reflection, he jerked back like he saw something else staring out. When he left, he said his daughter was alone in their house up on Walnut Street. I told him to take one of the station flashlights, but he pushed it back toward me and said, "Light makes it easier for them sometimes. It depends on the angle. It depends on the surface." I didn't understand what he meant until about an hour later, when I caught the silhouette in the reflection of the metal cabinet by the door even though the room itself was empty. I didn't see it form. It was just there, like a smear of darkness leaning a little to one side as if listening. It wasn't shaped like a person exactly, but it was close enough that my brain wanted to call it that. When I blinked, it twitched. Not a big movement, just a shift of the head like it was tilting at me. I froze completely. My hand was hovering over the console, and every sound in my body, every breath, every heartbeat, felt too loud. I backed away slowly, and when I looked again, the shape was gone. I've kept that cabinet halfway open since then so the metal doesn't reflect right. I don't want to see it again unless I have no choice. I'm trying to piece together what this thing is, or what these things are. It's hard to think clearly. It feels like the longer I stay awake, the more my mind starts slipping. Like the shadows around the edges of the room get thicker. I don't know if it's from fear or because something else is actually happening, but every so often it feels like the darkness is moving on its own, curling around corners or sliding under the doorframe. The backup lights don't help much. They're too weak and too uneven. Sometimes the red emergency glow makes everything look worse, like the room is bleeding. It's strange how quickly the world can fall apart. A few hours ago, the streets outside were full of people living normal lives. Now the sidewalks are empty, and the only sounds are the wind, distant crashes, and whatever keeps brushing against the station walls. Something brushed against the outer wall about 20 minutes ago. A slow drag like fingertips made of metal sliding across cement. I didn't want to check the window. Couldn't. Instead, I sat here gripping the microphone so hard my hand cramped. I keep thinking about the last normal moment I remember. It was around 6:45 p.m. I was standing right where I'm sitting now, sipping a warm cup of cheap station coffee. I was annoyed because the Wi-Fi had been spotty all day and I couldn't load a simple weather report. I never imagined that a few hours later I wouldn't be able to load anything at all. The internet isn't slow now. It's gone. Wiped off the face of the earth like it never existed. Same with the phone network. Same with the emergency lines. Even the portable ham radios are just spitting out broken static. The only reason this station can still talk is because it's old. Older than me. Old enough that parts of it still run on things that don't need the kind of power everything else depends on. I've been trying to figure out how widespread this is. Earlier, when the signal stabilized for a moment, I tried scanning for other stations. Nothing but white noise, thin and choked. There was one faint voice around 97.2 FM, but it vanished before I could make out the words. I don't know if it was another host or just someone's homemade transmitter sputtering its last breath. I wish I could tell you this was contained, that it was just Harrisburg or even just Pennsylvania. But about an hour after everything went dark, I caught the faint tail end of an automated broadcast repeating a line again and again before it finally died. It sounded federal, maybe from FEMA, or maybe from a military band. The only words I could make out were, multiple states affected, widespread failure, unknown visual phenomena, avoid reflective surfaces. The rest was too broken to understand. Unknown visual phenomena. That's their way of saying what none of us want to say out loud. They know something's out there. They've seen the shapes too. They just don't know what they are or how to fight them. I tried going out into the hallway earlier to check the rooftop access door in case I needed to move to higher ground. I couldn't bring myself to climb the stairs. The stairwell was pitch black, and as soon as I stepped inside, the air felt different, like it was thicker and colder than it should be. Like something was standing just out of reach of the little emergency light near my head. I backed out and shut the door even though I knew that door wasn't going to keep anything out. It made me feel better at the time, but now I keep staring at it waiting for the knob to turn. Another strange thing. Every time the power flickers, the reflections get stronger. I can see more detail in them, more movement, even when the room behind me is still. It's like whatever these things are, they get closer when the energy drops, like they're feeding on it. Calvin said electricity has charge, motion, life. Maybe to those things it's the same thing. Maybe they don't just drain the power grid. Maybe they drain us too. I'm starting to feel lightheaded. Not the kind from lack of sleep. It's more like something pulling at the edges of my thoughts, trying to dim them. I don't know if it's real or if stress is getting to me, but I keep losing track of time. I'll blink and suddenly 5 minutes are gone. It's happening more often now. If this broadcast starts to stutter or I go quiet for no reason, it's not because I'm leaving. It's because something's happening to me. The street outside is darker than it should be. Darker than night. Like the shadows are thickening, spreading. I can't see any stars at all. No moon either. The sky looks wrong, like it's coated in a layer of black fog that doesn't move with the wind. I watched a street lamp across the block collapse earlier, and when it hit the ground, something slid away from the broken shards of the bulb. At first I thought it was just a trick of the eyes, but the movement was too smooth, too controlled. It moved like a person crawling backward on all fours, but faster and too stretched out to be a person. There's something else I need to tell you. Something I haven't said yet because I've been trying to convince myself I imagined it. But lying right now would be worse than telling the truth. Around 11:20, not long before I went back on air, I saw someone on the street. A man. He was moving slowly along the sidewalk near the water, stumbling like he was hurt. I thought maybe he was one of the drivers from the pileup. I was about to call out to him through the cracked window when he turned his head toward a darkened shop window. And then, God, I can't get this image out of my head. His reflection didn't follow him. The glass showed something taller, something leaning down over him, something with no face but a smooth dark surface where a face should be. The man didn't see it. He just kept limping forward, but the reflection reached toward him. When he stepped out of the reflection's range, the shape snapped back into the glass like it was pulled by a rubber band. That was when I realized the reflections aren't just showing what's behind us. They're showing what's waiting behind the dark. I don't know if these things can cross over completely. Not yet, but they're getting clearer, closer, hungrier. The studio glass is starting to show something again. A flicker in the left corner. I'm not turning around. If something is there, I don't want to see it with my eyes. I'd rather pretend the reflection is lying. The generator is wheezing again. The hum is slowing. If it drops too low, I'll lose the transmitter. If the transmitter dies, then I'm just a man talking to himself in a dark room. I'm not ready for that. I need someone out there to hear me, even if it's just one person. Even if you're scared and hiding somewhere under a blanket, waiting for the sun to rise, if it ever rises again. I'm gonna keep talking until the machine gives out, and when it does, I'll switch to the crank radio for as long as my arms hold out. Something just tapped the window, soft, like a knuckle made of ice. I'm not looking. I won't. Not yet. If you're out there, stay alive. Stay conscious. Don't let the dark think for you. I'm not done. Not even close. The tapping on the window finally stopped, but the silence it left behind is worse. At least when something is tapping, you know where it is. When it goes quiet, you start imagining it moving somewhere else. Maybe toward the door. Maybe toward the cracks in the walls. Maybe toward the vents above my head. My breath keeps fogging the air in front of me, and every time the fog fades, I check if anything shifts in the glass on the console. The reflections are jittering now, like the darkness is vibrating. I keep wiping my eyes, thinking I'm losing focus, but it's not me. It's the glass. Every reflective surface in here feels like it's breathing, like it's alive in a way glass should never be alive. My chest feels tight, like the air is getting thinner even though I know it isn't. Maybe it's stress, maybe it's fear, or maybe whatever's draining the power grid is draining something inside us too. I don't know. I just know I can't stop talking or thinking or moving, because the moment I go still, the shadows around the edge of the room seem to stretch just a little closer, and the shapes in the reflections get clearer. I think the darkness responds to stillness, or maybe it responds to quiet. Every time I pause too long, I feel something in the room shift, not loudly, more like fabric brushing against a wall or someone leaning slowly across a floorboard. That's why I keep talking even when my throat feels raw. If silence is dangerous, then words are the only shield I've got left. Earlier, I tried opening the door to the hallway just a crack to see if I could hear anything moving in the building. The second the door opened, the darkness on the other side felt thicker, like stepping into a room where someone has been standing too long without moving. I didn't see anyone, but the air felt wrong, like something was right next to the door frame waiting for me to step out. I closed it again and slid a chair in front of it even though the chair wouldn't stop anything real. It just made me feel less exposed. The whole building is so quiet now that I can hear tiny sounds I never noticed before, like the faint buzz of the old fluorescent bulbs in the hallway even though they're dead, or the faint scratching somewhere inside the air vents. I've been thinking about what these things want. Maybe want isn't the right word because I don't know if they think the way we do. Maybe they're just drawn to energy like insects drawn to light. Maybe we're part of that energy. When the city grid went down, it didn't just die. It was taken. The way the lights flickered before going out wasn't random. It was like the electricity was being sucked away in one direction. If these things exist in the reflections, maybe they feed on motion or heat, or the charge inside the wires or the charge inside us. That would explain why people feel so tired, why thoughts feel heavier, why it's getting harder to stay awake. I haven't slept since yesterday morning, but sleep feels like a death sentence right now. If you fall asleep and stop moving and stop thinking, maybe that gives the reflections time to grow clearer. Or maybe that gives the things time to cross over. I don't know. All I know is the moment I close my eyes, I feel something shifting near my shoulder. I don't even need to see it. I can feel it in the air. I keep checking the reflection in the corner of the monitor. There's something there again. A tall shape, slightly bent forward, like it's trying to look over me. I'm not turning around. I made that mistake once earlier tonight when I heard something shift behind me. I turned so fast I knocked over a stack of papers. The papers scattered across the floor, but no one was there. The reflection was, But the room wasn't. The reflection of the shadow was standing so close behind me in the glass that it looked like it was breathing down my neck. But when I whipped around, the space was empty and cold. The worst part wasn't that the shadow wasn't there. The worst part was that when I turned back to the console, the reflection was gone too. Like it stepped away exactly when I turned. Like it knew. I don't know how much I've told you about the sky. The darkness outside isn't just dark. It's layered, like there's something moving inside it. Thick waves of black shifting like smoke trapped inside a jar. When the wind blows, the darkness doesn't follow it. It moves on its own, rolling in slow waves or twitching in quick bursts. A few minutes ago, I saw something stretch across the sky like a long arm reaching across a black sheet. It wasn't lightning. Lightning is bright and sharp. This was like a smear of shadow sliding under the clouds. If the clouds are even clouds anymore. The longer this goes on, the more the air smells wrong too. I keep noticing this faint metallic scent, like something burnt but not fully burnt. It's not smoke from fires. It's something else. Something that reminds me of old batteries that leak acid, or the smell you get when something overheats and melts plastic. It's faint but constant. I don't know if anyone else outside notices it, but it's getting stronger in here. Maybe the power lines outside are melting, or maybe it's coming from the shapes themselves. I keep thinking about the man I saw on the street earlier, the one whose reflection twisted into something else. I wonder if he's still alive. I wonder if he ever even knew something was behind him in the glass. Maybe that's what these things are. Things that only exist where we can't see them directly. Things that can only be seen in reflections or shadows cast by something else. And maybe when they get close enough, the reflection stops being a reflection and becomes something like a doorway. If that ever happens in this room, I won't survive it. A few minutes before I went on for this part of the broadcast, I heard something fall upstairs. A heavy thud followed by a scraping noise. Then something like a low groan, but mechanical, not human. The rooftop access door might have blown open, or maybe something climbed onto the building. I don't know what's worse, thinking these things might be outside or thinking they might already be inside. I went into the hallway earlier to check for signs of other people. The hallway looked stretched, like the shadows at the far end were longer than they should be. The ceiling lights were flickering in slow motion, like someone was messing with time itself. I saw my reflection in one of the door windows and almost screamed because it didn't move right. I turned my head quickly and the reflection turned slower, like it was lagging behind, like it needed an extra second to catch up. When it finally matched me, its head tilted slightly too far to the right before snapping back into place. I backed away slowly until I could slam the studio door shut again. I haven't looked through the hallway window since. The tapping on the window earlier wasn't the first time I heard something try to get in. Around 10 o'clock, something walked across the roof. Not footsteps exactly. Too soft, too smooth, like something with long limbs pulling itself along the surface. The sound traveled through the ceiling, and for a moment I thought it was going to push through the tiles. But it stopped right above the booth and stayed there for almost a full minute. The ceiling looked completely normal, but I could feel pressure, like something heavy was crouched right above me, listening. Then it moved again, sliding toward the edge of the building before everything went quiet. I don't think these things need to break in physically. I think they follow energy, heat, thoughts. I think the studio is glowing to them like a beacon because this transmitter is still alive. The generator is weaker now, but it's still pushing enough power to catch their attention. I wonder if they can sense the electricity pulsing through the walls. I wonder if they can sense me. Calvin said something else before he left. Something I didn't understand then, but I'm starting to now. He said, "Don't let them catch your outline. They need the shape first." I didn't know what he meant, But now I think I do. The reflections show outlines first. Once they have that, they start filling them in. First it's just a shape. Then it starts to look more like something alive. Then it starts to move like it wants to step through. I covered most of the reflective surfaces in here, but I can't cover everything. The microphone casing has a slight shine to it. The console has glossy buttons. Even the plastic on the chair can reflect faint shapes. Every time the generator dips, those reflections get deeper, like someone smeared ink across them. And sometimes there's movement in that ink. I wish I knew if anyone was out there hearing this. I wish I knew if the sun is going to come back. I keep checking the horizon through the blinds, but the sky looks flat and endless, like sunlight wouldn't be able to get through even if it tried. The darkness feels solid, like it's swallowing everything. I'm not sure what time it is anymore. My watch keeps glitching. The second hand shudders at random moments. Sometimes it jumps forward by a few seconds. Sometimes it stops. At one point it spun backward for about 5 full rotations before freezing again. If time itself is slipping, then I don't know what that means for us. The generator coughed again. A long, low sputter. I put my hand on the panel and felt the heat rising off it. It's too hot. That's not normal. Generators don't overheat in cold weather unless something is draining them unnaturally. It feels like something is leaching the energy right out of it, pulling it away from the machine like a magnet. I'm staying on air as long as I can. When this generator dies, I'll move to the crank radio. When that dies, I'll yell out the window if I have to. Something is brushing the door again. A soft drag, like fingertips of shadow sliding down the wood. If you're out there, don't blink too long. Don't stare into reflections. Don't let the dark take your shape. I'm not stopping. Not yet. The door stopped shaking a few minutes ago, but I haven't moved from this chair since it happened. My hand is still hovering near the console, and I can feel a faint tremble in my fingers that won't go away. I keep telling myself it was just the wind, even though the wind doesn't drag across with like fingertips pulling themselves along. There's this pressure in the room now, almost like the air is thicker than before. I can feel it pressing against my chest every time I try to breathe too deep. It's like the dark outside is pushing its way in through every tiny gap in the building. I keep glancing at the window even though the blinds are mostly shut. There's a sliver at the bottom where the blinds don't quite reach, and I can see just a thin bit of the street through it. The sidewalk looks wrong in the darkness. The lines between the concrete slabs look deeper, like cracks opening into something blacker than the night. Every now and then I swear I see something move along the ground, sliding across the pavement like a shadow that doesn't belong to anything. But the moment I blink, it's gone. I'm not sure if it's my eyes playing tricks on me or if the dark is changing shape out there. The sky hasn't brightened at all. If anything, it's getting darker, like the night is thickening, like the world is shrinking into it. I tried adjusting the transmitter earlier, hoping to push the signal farther just in case someone outside the city needed to hear this. But the moment I touched the dial, the reflection in the metal trim shifted again. It wasn't just a shadow this time. It had a head, shoulders, arms that stretched downward far too long to be human. It leaned toward me with this slow, patient motion, like it wasn't trying to scare me, just study me. I jerked my hand back and the reflection snapped away like it had been sucked down into the metal. I covered that strip with a torn piece of paper and taped it down even though I know paper won't stop anything real. It just keeps me from seeing it. There's this feeling creeping into the back of my mind that the reflections only get clearer when I'm afraid. Like fear sharpens them, lets them take shape. Maybe that's why they keep appearing in the glass. Maybe fear gives them something to build from. I'm trying to stay calm, but my hands won't stop shaking, and every inch of this room feels too small. The shadows in the corners feel like they're leaning toward me. The longer I stare at them, the deeper they look, like tunnels leading into something endless. I keep thinking about what Calvin said before he left. They need your outline. I didn't understand it then, but I'm starting to now. He didn't just mean your shape. He meant your presence, your attention. The moment you focus on them, even for a second, they start matching you, turning into something that mirrors you but wrong. Not a reflection, not an imitation, something else. Something that grows clearer each time you acknowledge it. If these things are feeding on energy, maybe they're also feeding on awareness. Maybe noticing them is what gives them the chance to form. I don't know. It's the only thing that makes sense right now. The more I look at the reflections, the more they change. The more I think about them, the stronger they seem. Maybe that's why the darkness feels like it's pressing in, because everyone is afraid, and fear is feeding whatever is coming through the glass. Earlier, when the generator dropped again, I saw something new in the corners of the room. I didn't want to describe it, but I need to, because if you see it too, you need to know it's not just in your head. When the lights dipped, the corners got darker than the rest of the room, like someone poured ink into the air. And in that ink, something stretched outward, like a long arm made of shadow reaching from the dark to the floor. It didn't touch anything. It just hung there for a moment like it was tasting the air. When the lights surged back up, the arm vanished. But the darkness stayed a little thicker afterward, like it left something behind. I haven't left this booth in more than an hour. The hallway feels too dangerous. The stairwell feels deadly. And the rooftop, I don't even want to think about what might be up there right now. Something moved across the roof again 20 minutes ago. This time it was louder, not dragging thudding. Slow, deliberate thuds, evenly spaced, like someone walking on long, heavy limbs. I froze when I heard it, pressing my back against the seat, trying not to breathe too loud. The ceiling bent inward a little with each step, not enough to break, but enough that the boards groaned. Then the steps stopped right above the booth again, and the ceiling dipped for a second like something knelt down to listen. I held my breath so hard my vision went blurry. After a moment, it slid away, dragging itself back toward the far side of the roof. If it wanted to come in, it could. I know it could. These things aren't limited by walls. They move through the dark. They hide in reflections. They're already inside every surface that can show them. The only thing keeping me safe right now is the small circle of weak light the generator is feeding into the booth. And even that isn't going to hold much longer. The hum of the transmitter sounds more strained each minute. The coil inside it is making this faint whining sound like a sick dog trying to breathe. I don't know if sunlight would stop them. I don't even know if sunlight exists anymore. The sky hasn't changed since the moment the grid collapsed. Not a hint of dawn. Not a single star. Just a thick blanket of shadow covering everything. When I try to look at it for too long, I get this headache behind my right eye, like the darkness is pushing back into my skull. I looked for too long earlier, and the headache got so bad I had to grab the desk just to stay upright. When I blinked, I saw something behind my eyelids. The same tall, leaning shape I've been seeing in the reflections. It was closer when I opened my eyes again. Not in the room, but in the glass. It's like it's waiting for something. Like it's patient. Like it knows time is on its side. My whole body feels heavy. Like the air around me is thicker. Like something is pressing down on my shoulders. I don't know if anyone else is experiencing this too, but it feels like the longer you stay awake in this darkness, the more it weighs on you. The more it tries to lull you into stillness. Sometimes I catch myself nodding off, and the moment I do, the shadows shift. I can't tell if it's real or if my mind is folding in on itself from lack of sleep, but I'm scared to close my eyes. I'm scared if I drift off, Something will pull itself out of the reflection and fill the outline I leave behind. I tried to check the emergency broadcast again about 10 minutes ago. There's nothing now. Not even static. Just silence. No hum. No hiss. No leftover signal from the other stations. The entire band feels empty, like the airwaves have been swallowed. If anyone else is broadcasting, I can't hear them. Maybe they can't hear me either. Maybe the darkness is blocking the signals, bending them, eating them. Or maybe the stations are gone. The thought of being the last voice on the air feels like a weight I can't carry. But I have to. If anyone is out there, even miles away, even hiding under a blanket in a basement, even sitting alone in a car with a dying battery, I need them to hear a human voice. I need them to know they're not alone. Something keeps shifting behind the glass of the studio window. I can't see it fully because the blinds are down, but I can see the edges of movement in the light that slips through the cracks. Slow, trembling motions, like fingers tapping, or like something brushing its arm against the glass trying to find a way in. The tapping earlier felt like a message. This feels like testing, like probing, like the thing outside is mapping the surface. The air feels colder against my ankles, like something is creeping across the floor. I keep lifting my feet up onto the chair so nothing can touch them, even though I know that's childish. But fear makes you childish. Fear strips you down to instincts, and every instinct in me is screaming that the shadows in the room want to wrap around my legs and pull. The generator dipped again, hard this time. The lights almost cut out completely. For just a second, the room went nearly black, just a faint red glow from the exit sign. In that second, I swear I saw movement in every reflective surface at once. The glass of the monitor, the side of the console, even the faint shine on the microphone. Shapes lunging forward, shapes stretching out, shapes that didn't match my silhouette. When the lights flicked back on, everything snapped into stillness again, like they froze mid-motion. They're getting bolder, or hungrier, or closer. I don't know how long I can keep this going, but I'm here. I'm still talking. I'm still breathing. And as long as the lights stay on, the reflections can't fully come through. I hope that's true. I hope I'm not lying to myself just to stay sane. I don't know what time it is. My watch is dead now. The second hand froze at some point, pointing between two marks like it couldn't decide whether to keep going. The clocks in the studio are all still. Outside, the world is frozen in this endless night. I don't know if dawn will ever push through whatever is covering the sky. The room is colder again. My breath is starting to fog more. Something is brushing under the door, sliding along the gap between the wood and the floor. I can't see it, but I can hear it. A soft, slow drag, like something testing the space, like something patient. If you're listening, don't let the dark read your outline. Don't let it copy you. Keep moving your hands. Keep your thoughts sharp. Don't stay still. I'm not giving up. Not while this signal is alive. I'll keep talking until something takes the words from me. I keep shifting in this chair because every time I sit still for too long, I feel something close in. It happens so subtly that I don't realize it until I'm already tense. Like someone moved up behind me without making a sound. The studio feels smaller than it did even an hour ago. Like the walls are leaning inward by an inch each time the generator sputters. Maybe it's in my head, but the air changes every time the hum dips. It gets heavier, colder, and it carries this thick sense of pressure, like the dark outside is pushing in through the bricks. I keep glancing at the cracks between the panels in the ceiling. The longer I stare, the more it looks like something is pulsing in the shadows up there. A heartbeat, almost, or a slow nodding motion. I don't know how long it's been since the grid failed, but time is getting slippery. Right before I started this part of the broadcast, I caught myself staring at the blinking light on the console for what must have been 10 minutes. It wasn't blinking in any pattern, just randomly flickering like a dying firefly. But I kept staring at it, unable to look away, like the light was pulling me in. When I finally blinked, my whole spine jolted awake like I'd been drifting too close to sleep. The shadows on the floor had crawled a little further toward the chair than they were before. I'm not imagining that part. I know where the shadows were. They don't normally move like that. Not unless something is casting them. Not unless something is just out of sight. I keep telling myself not to let my mind fill in blanks, but the blank spaces are getting bigger, and something in them is breathing. There's this vibration under the floorboards now. Earlier it was faint enough that I wondered if it was just my pulse, but now it's clearer. A low, steady rumble. Not mechanical. More like something shifting its weight deep under the building, stretching slowly. The walls creak every so often, and it's not because the building is settling. It's because something is pushing. I've lived here long enough to know what normal building sounds are. None of this is normal. The street outside must be changing. I can't see much through the thin gap under the blinds, but I can see enough to know the darkness isn't just covering the city. It's shaping it. The sidewalk looks warped. The shadows of the lamp posts stretch even though the lamps are dead. One of those shadows bends at an angle that doesn't match anything physical. It curves upward instead of sideways, like an arm reaching up towards something in the sky. I don't understand how shadows can move without light, but they are. Slowly, deliberately, crawling across the concrete like living things. Earlier, I heard the sound of something metal ringing against the pavement. A street sign must have fallen over. But then I heard the metal scrape along the ground, dragging itself. Not blown by wind, dragged. I waited for the scraping to stop. It took almost a full minute before it finally went quiet, like someone was pulling it away across the street, taking it somewhere deeper into the dark. My vision keeps blurring when I look at anything too bright, even though nothing in this room is actually bright anymore. The emergency light above the door flicks in and out, and the moment it dims, I feel a prickling at the back of my neck. When the light returns, the feeling fades. It's like the edges of my thoughts get softer each time the room darkens. Like something is seeping into the gaps when my attention slips. I'm trying not to blink too long. Earlier, I blinked just a moment too slowly and saw something in the afterimage of the room. A thin shape leaning over the console, its head nearly touching the microphone. When my eyes opened, it wasn't there. But the air still felt colder in that spot, like the imprint of it hadn't faded yet. Calvin said these things need your outline. I've been thinking about that more than anything else. Maybe they start with your shape, then they use it to map something else. Maybe that's how they cross over. Maybe they're looking for openings, for moments when a person's mind drifts or their thoughts soften. Maybe outlines aren't just physical. Maybe your thoughts, when unfocused, make a shape too. I had a moment earlier when I stopped talking just to breathe, and the silence in the booth felt alive. It pressed into my ears until I could hear a soft vibration inside my skull, like distant humming. The reflections darkened during that silence, their shapes sharpening along the edges. I started talking again as fast as I could, and the sharpness faded. I think these things respond to silence the way animals respond to movement. Or maybe silence gives them space to move. I don't know if anyone else still has working radios. Every time I take a break from speaking, I try flipping through the frequencies again. Nothing. Just a deep, hollow quiet. It's not even static anymore. Static would be comforting. Static would mean the world still has some kind of background noise. But the silence is too deep, like the airwaves themselves have been drained, like the sky swallowed the signals whole. The hallway outside the booth is darker now. The emergency lights have faded to almost nothing, and the darkness near the far end has a shape. I know it does. If I stare long enough, I see the faint silhouette of someone standing there. Not moving, not breathing, just waiting. But when I blink, the shape melts into the shadows. I'm scared that if I keep staring, it will come closer. Or maybe I'm scared that if I look away, it will move while I'm not watching. The door to the hallway has a thin glass window near the top. I covered most of it with a paper sign earlier, but the bottom corner is still exposed. I saw something in that corner a few minutes ago. Not a clear reflection, more like a suggestion of movement, like something tall passing by the glass. The paper fluttered even though the air in this room hasn't moved in hours. It felt like something brushed against it from the other side. I thought about barricading the door, but what would that change? These things don't move like animals or people. They move like shadows pulled on strings. They don't need a door. They just need darkness. My head keeps dropping forward. My eyes keep slipping shut without my permission. I have to slap my leg every few minutes to stay awake. A few minutes ago, my chin hit my chest, and I swear the moment I drifted, something in the room leaned closer. The air near my left ear went cold in a way that didn't feel natural. I felt the faintest shift of breath, not warm, but cold, like air being displaced by something leaning in. When I jerked awake, there was nothing there, but the shadow on the floor had changed shape, stretching toward the chair like a hand reaching up from the ground. I don't know how long a person can stay awake before their mind starts breaking, but I can feel the edges of my thoughts fraying. The darkness outside looks thicker every time I glance toward it. The reflections in the console are deeper than they should be. I caught a glimpse of something earlier in the corner of the monitor, the silhouette of a head with no face. When I leaned forward to see if it was just a trick, the silhouette tilted like it was mimicking the motion. If it mimics me, if it learns my shape, then maybe it can take it. Maybe these things aren't showing us what they look like. Maybe they're showing us what they want to become. I keep telling myself that dawn will come. That sunlight, if it exists, will cut through whatever is happening. But I can't shake the feeling that the sun is gone. Not hidden, gone. Like the darkness has become something solid blocking everything above us. I pressed my hand to the studio wall earlier to steady myself, and the surface felt warm. Too warm. A few minutes later, it felt cold. Not cool, cold. The temperature keeps shifting in here without warning. It's like the room is breathing with the darkness. The generator is whining again. A long, drawn-out moan. The lights dipped so low that the room blurred for a second. I thought I saw something crouched in the corner under the desk. Something thin with long arms folded beneath it. When the lights came back up, the corner was empty. But the feeling didn't leave. I keep pulling my feet up off the floor because I can't shake the idea that something is waiting for my foot to touch the ground. Every part of me is tired. My bones feel heavy. My thoughts feel thick. The only thing keeping the shadows from swallowing this room is the sound of my voice. I know that sounds insane, but it's the only constant I've noticed. They react to silence. They move into silence. They fill silence. So I'm going to keep speaking, even if my voice cracks, even if I'm shaking. If anyone hears this, anyone at all, stay awake. Stay alert. Don't look too long into anything that reflects. Don't let the dark shape you. Don't let it learn you. I'm not stopping. Not as long as this signal holds. The generator dipped again a few minutes ago, and for a second the room went so dark I thought the shadows were about to break through the walls. When the lights flickered back, the reflections in the console stayed dark 2 seconds longer than they should have. I don't think reflections lag like that. Not when everything else is lit again. That 2-second delay felt like something was choosing not to appear, like it was watching me from the other side of the glass and waiting for the next blackout to push a little closer. I keep glancing at the buttons on the console. They look glossy even with dust covering them. Every time my eyes pass over them, the black surface stretches inward like there's depth behind the plastic. Depth where no depth should be. My throat hurts from talking, but I can't let my voice drop too long. When I pause, the darkness presses harder. It feels like a weight on my shoulders, like something behind me is leaning down, hovering just a breath away from touching the back of my neck. I'm afraid to check the reflection. I'm afraid to turn around. And that's what keeps this feeling alive. This constant tension. This constant sense that something is inches away but never where I can see it. I keep shifting in the chair, not because it helps, but because staying still feels like an invitation. I don't know how long the city outside has been changing, but each time I risk a glance under the blinds, it looks worse. The buildings look taller, like they're stretching upward into the dark sky. The windows look deeper, like the shadows inside them go back farther than the actual rooms should allow. It's like everything is being pulled toward something above us, or maybe pulled toward something inside the darkness itself. The streetlights that fell earlier are still on the ground, but their shadows shouldn't exist. They're casting shadows even though there's no light, and the shadows point upward instead of down. How does that make sense? How does a shadow go up? I watched one of them crawl slowly across the asphalt like it was alive. When the generator flickered again, it moved faster. There was a moment about 20 minutes ago when I thought I heard someone scream from the far end of the street. A long, dragging scream, like someone calling for help while being pulled backward. The scream cut off halfway through, like a hand clamped over their mouth. I waited to hear footsteps or movement or anything that sounded human afterward. Nothing. Just the long echo of the scream fading into the thick air. And right after that, the sky above the rooftops pulsed. Just once. A faint ripple of darkness, like something huge moved behind the clouds. The strange thing is, I don't see any animals out there. Not even birds. No dogs barking. No stray cats. Nothing. It's like they vanished or hid hours before everything fell apart. Maybe they sensed something before we did. Animals always know when something is wrong. They hear signals, vibrations, frequencies we can't. If these things started forming in reflections or shadows long before the grid collapsed, maybe the animals saw them first. Maybe that's why they ran. I keep hearing faint clicking noises now. Not from the console. From the air itself. Sharp, tiny clicks that sound like fingernails tapping glass. Sometimes they come from behind me, sometimes from above, sometimes from the direction of the door. They're not constant. They appear and disappear randomly, but they always happen when the lights flicker. I tried tapping the console to see if the clicks would mimic the sound. They didn't. They waited until my hand stopped. Then the tapping started again, 3 clicks. Pause. 2 clicks. Pause. 4 clicks. Almost like a code, or like someone drumming their fingers to see if I react. My eyes feel heavy. My vision blurs every few minutes. Every time I blink, I feel this tug behind my eyelids, like the darkness is trying to drag the blink longer so it has more time to move. I caught myself drifting once and snapped awake so hard my teeth hurt. In that half second where the world dimmed, I saw something crouching on the far side of the studio. A long, thin shape, hunched with its head cocked sideways. When the lights came fully back, the corner was empty, but the carpet where it crouched looked darker, like something had been pressing down on it. I don't know if sleep is even possible anymore. Not real sleep. Not under this sky. Not with the air so heavy. Even if I tried, I feel like something would pull me into the reflections the moment my thoughts softened. Maybe that's what happened to the people who disappeared. Maybe they didn't run or hide. Maybe they slipped into the dark spaces between reflections. Maybe they got pulled through like outlines traced on a page. I keep replaying the moment the first reflection appeared wrong. When I saw that shape behind me in the lobby window earlier tonight. The way its head bent too far to the left. The way it didn't match my height or my posture. I didn't want to think about it then. Now I can't stop thinking about it. What if that wasn't the first reflection that changed? What if it started earlier, and we just didn't notice because we weren't paying attention? What if the reflections have been forming slowly for days or weeks, waiting for the right moment to pull power from the grid and break into our world? The tapping at the door is back, softer this time, almost gentle, like the touch of someone trying to wake you without scaring you. 3 taps, then silence, then 2 taps. I'm not answering it. I don't care if it sounds human. I don't care if it sounds friendly. Nothing that taps in a pattern like that is human at this hour. Nothing that stands in that hallway is friendly now. I think the dark shapes can mimic sound. Earlier, I heard what sounded like footsteps in the stairwell. Slow, steady, perfectly spaced. No breathing, no shuffling. Just the sound of someone walking without weight. When I held my breath and listened, the footsteps paused, like they were listening too. Then they started again, descending 1 step at a time, making the metal of the stairs ring just slightly. I didn't open the stairwell door. I'm terrified of what's behind it. My skin feels strange. The air in the room makes it prickle, especially around my arms. Sometimes it feels like someone is hovering a cold hand just an inch above my skin. Not touching, just following the shape of my arm. I keep brushing my hands over my sleeves to warm them, but the cold feeling returns the moment I stop, like something invisible is mapping me out. The reflections in the console look deeper every time I check. I don't even want to look directly anymore. I use the corner of my eye because looking full on makes the shapes clearer. In the left reflection, something is moving. I don't want to describe it, but I have to. It looks like a long, thin arm dragging across the inside of the reflection, like someone pressing their hand against the inside of a window. The fingers are too long. The joints are too sharp. And when the reflection twitches, the arm twitches with it like it's testing its strength. The hum of the transmitter is erratic now. It rises and falls in uneven bursts. Sometimes it sounds like it's straining to breathe. Sometimes it sounds like something is pulling the power out of it in slow gulps. The lights dim every time the hum drops. Each dip lasts a little longer than the last. I don't know how much longer the machine can hold out. When it dies, the darkness in this room will thicken fast. I'll have nothing left to push it back except my voice. If the generator goes, I won't be able to use the transmitter. I'll have to switch to the crank radio. That means my signal will be weaker. Maybe only a mile or 2. Maybe less. But I'll shout into that radio until my arms give out. I won't let the silence take this booth. If the silence wins, the darkness follows. And if the darkness takes this room, I don't think I'll make it out. I can't stop thinking about the people who might still be out there, hiding under blankets, sitting in cars with fading batteries, curled up in basements with candles flickering. Maybe they're hearing the same tapping on their windows. Maybe their reflections have started twitching too. I want to tell them to stay awake, to keep moving their fingers, to keep their thoughts sharp. I want to tell them they're not alone, even if the world feels smaller each hour. But I don't know how many are left. The scratching under the door is louder now. Slow, steady strokes. I can picture it without needing to see it. Long fingers dragging across the floor, mapping the wood grain. Waiting. I'm not stopping. Not while this voice can still push back against the dark. I'll keep speaking until the final light dies. I don't know when the last time was that I actually said the time out loud. The clocks are dead. My watch is frozen. And outside the sky is stuck in the same thick layer of black that doesn't shift or fade or show any hint of morning. Still, my body knows it's been a long time. My jaw aches from talking. My eyes burn. And my thoughts drift in and out like they're wading through deep water. If this was just a normal night, I'd have gone home hours ago, crashed on my couch, and maybe fallen asleep to some dumb late-night show playing in the background. Now the only thing I can fall asleep to is the sound of my own voice, and I can't let that happen, because if my voice stops, I'm scared the silence will swallow me whole. At some point, maybe an hour ago, maybe more, I realized that the pressure in the room wasn't just fear. It felt heavier, like the air itself was being squeezed. My ears kept popping, like there was a tiny shift in the pressure every few minutes. It reminded me of being on a plane during turbulence, except there was no engine sound, no seatbelt chime, just the low hum of the fading generator and the faint scraping that comes and goes around the door frame. The more the pressure built, the more the reflections seemed to sharpen. The shapes in them stood taller, straighter, like they were gaining definition, like something on the other side was solidifying. I needed to know if the rest of the building was still there. I know that sounds stupid when I already know the answer, but I needed something physical to ground me. Something real, not just shadows and reflections and sounds in the walls. So during one of the moments where the generator steadied and the lights held, I did something that probably ranks near the top of the dumbest decisions I've ever made. I opened the studio door and stepped into the hallway. The air outside the booth felt colder and heavier, like walking into a room filled with invisible smoke. The emergency lights that used to glow weakly along the walls had dimmed to almost nothing. Just a faint red halo around each fixture. The end of the hallway looked like it had been erased, swallowed in complete shadow. I could only see about 10 feet in front of me, and everything beyond that was a dark blur. Still, I stepped forward, one slow foot at a time, keeping my shoulder brushing the wall so I could feel something solid. My breath sounded too loud in my own ears, and every exhale fogged in front of my face, even though we're inside and the building shouldn't be this cold. Halfway down the hall, I passed one of the old framed posters we keep here. It used to show a summer music festival ad, bright and crowded and messy. Now the glass over it was cracked down the middle, and the image underneath was warped. My reflection in the broken glass didn't look right. I tried not to look, but my eyes snagged on it anyway. The part of the glass on the left showed my shoulder and side of my face, but on the right where the crack ran, the reflection bent like it was taking a second opinion. Behind my warped shape, there was a hint of something else. Taller, like it was just about to lean into view, but not yet. I ripped the frame off the wall and let it fall face down. The crash sounded wrong in the hallway, too flat, like the sound got swallowed halfway through. The door to the stairwell was at the end of the hall, just a darker rectangle in the far shadow. As I stood there staring at it, I heard that same slow, metal ring of footsteps from somewhere below. One step, then a long pause, then another. Not rushing, not stumbling, just steady and patient. I imagined something tall and thin walking up those steps, each step careful, precise. I didn't wait to see if it reached the door. I turned back toward the booth and nearly ran. On the way back, I passed another windowed office door, and this time I made a mistake I won't make again. I glanced into the glass. My reflection stood there, pale and tilted, but there was something else layered behind it. A second, darker outline, just a fraction taller, standing too close to my back. His head was bent over my shoulder, like it was listening to my thoughts. The room behind the glass was empty. The reflection behind me wasn't. Took everything in me not to scream. I forced my legs to keep moving until I reached the studio and slammed the door. The moment it shut, the scraping under the door frame started again. Slower, almost playful, like something was amused. I think leaving the booth drew attention. The hallway felt thicker when I opened that door, like the darkness had been waiting there, pressed up against the frame. Maybe the studio was holding a thin line, and when I broke it, something shifted. The generator did not like it either. As soon as I sat back down in this chair, the hum faltered. The lights dimmed, then flickered twice before stabilizing again. I rested my hand on the console to steady it and felt a faint vibration travel through my fingertips, like a low warning. Even with all that, I'm glad I went out there. It reminded me the world is still physical. There are still walls, floors, doors. The building is still here. It hasn't dissolved completely into whatever the sky has turned into. If the building is still here, maybe other buildings are too. Maybe there are pockets out there where people are doing what I'm doing, holding out with whatever they've got left. Candles, hand-crank radios, with stoves, old flashlights that don't rely on complex circuits. This whole thing has turned the modern world inside out. The devices we loved the most were the first to die. The expensive phones, the smart TVs, the tablet screens, they all went black like someone flipped a switch. The last time I had any kind of signal was on my phone right as the grid started to fail. Just for a few minutes, I saw a flood of messages scroll past before everything cut off. My sister texting me from Pittsburgh. Lights flickering here too. Phone weird. Are you seeing this? A friend from New York. Subway stalled. People freaking out. Some say shadows in the windows? A guy I went to school with who lives near DC. Rumor. Something hit our satellites. Military scrambling. Don't trust what you see in glass. There were a few news notifications as well. Half-loaded headlines that froze before I could tap them. Something about an unidentified global anomaly. Something about reflected visual distortions reported in multiple nations. And then everything shut down. The connection didn't just drop. It cut in a way that felt final. I remember one headline that stuck. European power grids report synchronized fluctuations. Scientists baffled. There was a mention of France, Germany, the UK, all seeing weird spikes and drops on their main lines. At the time, it sounded like boring infrastructure stuff. Now I think those drops were the first feeding. The first slow sip before the full drain. If this isn't just here, if it's Europe, if it's all over the States, then this isn't a local disaster. This is global. We're not the epicenter. We're just one more dark patch on a map that no one can see anymore. I don't know what started it, but I remember hearing something 2 weeks ago. A late-night science talk segment. Some European lab, Switzerland, I think, was running a new round of tests with a particle accelerator. They were pushing energy levels higher than usual, studying some kind of vacuum fluctuation. The host joked about black holes and ripples in reality. It sounded like sci-fi filling dead air. But the guest, this quiet guy with a calm voice, said something that stuck with me. He said, "We're starting to see hints that empty space is not really empty at all. It's more like a sea of unstable patterns waiting for the right kind of push." I didn't think about that again until the sky turned into one giant dark sheet, and reflections everywhere started sprouting shapes. I'm not saying that lab caused this. I have no way of knowing. But if all it needed was the right kind of push, maybe we gave it one. Maybe some experiment, some weapon test, some attempt at a global communication upgrade, something we built and thought we understood, tore a thin layer we didn't even know was there, and something on the other side leaned in. The most chilling thing I heard before the signals died came from what sounded like a military shortwave band. I was scanning frequencies earlier, trying to see if anyone else was still transmitting, and I landed on a half-broken voice repeating a phrase until it cut off mid-sentence. It sounded like, Hostile visual entities confirmed. Present only in reflective surfaces. Do not interact. Do not respond. Appear to cluster around high-charge zones and cognitive activity centers. Cognitive activity centers. That's a fancy way of saying places where people are thinking. Cities, hospitals, schools, radio stations. Anywhere our minds are buzzing, those things swarm. If that transmission was real and not my brain playing tricks, then someone out there knows what they are seeing, and they don't know how to stop it either. If they cluster around power and minds, that explains a lot. It explains why the grid went first like a blood trail drawing them in. It explains why the more afraid we become, the clearer they seem to get. Fear is loud inside the head. It's like shouting into a dark room and expecting no one to answer. I don't have answers, but I can give you something practical. Strategies, tips, little pieces of control you can take back in a night that took almost everything. Cover your mirrors. Smash them if you have to. Anything that shows a clean reflection. Block it. Aluminum foil, towels, newspapers, even mud smeared across glass. It doesn't matter, as long as it breaks the outline. Screens are useless now, but if they still show any kind of reflection, crack them. Break the surface. Bend the image. Calvin might have been right. They need your outline first. If the outline is broken, maybe it slows them. Maybe it confuses them. Use weak, scattered light instead of sharp, focus beams. Flashlights with busted lenses are safer than perfect ones. Candles behind frosted glass or thin cloth are better than bare bulbs in front of windows. These things seem to like clean lines and clear silhouettes. Anything that smears or diffuses your shape is safer. If you have old lanterns, oil lamps, even a camp stove for light, keep them low and hidden from windows. Don't stand with your back to a big pane of glass. Don't walk past the glossy side of a car unless you have to. If you can get to the kind of tech that doesn't rely on complex circuits, old wind-up radios, analog gauges, mechanical timers, hold on to them. Our modern systems folded fast, but the older stuff is hanging on longer. This station is still breathing because most of its bones are older than I am. If you have a manual water pump, use it. If you have a wood stove, cook on it. If your neighbor has a battery-operated fan, share it. The smart devices we filled our lives with had no idea how to survive this. The old junk in your garage might keep you alive. Also, stay together, but not in big tight groups facing mirrors. Spread out just enough that you're not piled in front of one reflective surface. Sit in a circle if you can, backs to each other, eyes facing outward. That way, if someone's reflection starts to look wrong, somebody else might see it first. And if you see something in glass that doesn't match the person in front of it, don't let them keep staring at it. Pull them away. Break the glass. Cut off the outline. I know I've talked a lot about the fear and the shadows and the things that move when the lights dip, but there's another side to this that I need to tell you. Because even now, with everything going to hell, people are trying, fighting, adjusting in ways that would have sounded ridiculous yesterday. Before I locked myself in the booth, I looked down at the building across the street. There's an old brick apartment complex there. Earlier tonight, right after the power started failing, I saw chaos in those windows. People running back and forth, flashlights waving, curtains flung open and shut. Now it looks different, quieter, but not empty. Every now and then, a faint glow moves around inside. A candle or maybe a lantern. I saw someone on the third floor hanging something over the windows, piece by piece. Sheets, blankets, maybe towels. They covered every shiny surface. On one balcony, two shapes sat close together, heads leaning toward each other. They didn't move much, but they didn't look dead. They looked like two people trying to stay warm and awake. I watched as one of them lit something, a lantern maybe, and then quickly set it on the floor instead of holding it chest high. They're learning, adapting. Even from here, I can see the way they angle their bodies to avoid catching long reflections in the glass. Right before the darkness got thick, another building further down near the river had people in the parking lot gathered around a pickup truck. The truck's mirrors were covered with cloth, and its windows smeared with mud. In the truck bed, someone had bolted an old car battery to a makeshift rig connected to a little crank generator, the kind you'd see at camping stores. A few people took turns cranking while others heated something in metal pots over a small controlled fire. Food, maybe, or water. I watched one older man show a younger one how to siphon water from the building's old boiler system, how to run it through coffee filters and boil it. Even in the middle of all this, he was teaching, passing on something useful. That image is stuck in my mind just as much as the shadows are. This isn't just a story about things that move in reflections. It's also a story about people remembering how to stay human when everything built on convenience strips away. Neighbors who never spoke to each other before sharing canned beans in a dim hallway. Strangers showing each other how to use old tools that outlived the grid. Somebody upstairs might be holding a baby right now, humming softly just to keep it from crying and giving the dark a reason to listen. Somebody down the block might be wrapping their last clean shirt around a broken mirror, so the kid sitting across from them doesn't see something in the glass that isn't their own face. I need you to know that I've seen good things tonight too. Small things, but they matter. They matter more than whatever is pressing against the walls. They matter more than the shapes in the reflections. Because the one thing these things don't have, the one thing they can't mimic, no matter how closely they copy our outlines, is the way we hold on to each other when everything goes wrong. I'm scared out of my mind. I'm cold. I'm tired. I'm talking into a room that feels smaller each minute, with a generator that sounds like it's breathing its last. But I'm also angry. I'm angry that whatever is out there thinks it can drain the light and the current and maybe even the thoughts out of this place and leave us crawling in the dark. I don't know how much power I have, sitting here in this chair with a microphone and a dying transmitter, but I can still send out words. And as long as those words ride the last bits of current through the cables and out into the air, the darkness hasn't taken everything. We don't get to choose what hit us. Maybe it came from some experiment gone wrong. Maybe it came from outside our planet. Maybe it was always there in the empty spaces of the world, waiting for the right crack to slip through. But we get to choose what we do now. We can sit alone and stare into the reflections, or we can cover the glass, share the candles, and keep each other awake. If you're listening to this on some old battery radio in Harrisburg or anywhere else that this weak, flickering signal can reach, here's what I want you to do when I stop talking later. Not if, when. Because eventually I'm going to lose this transmitter. I'm not stupid. I know that. When that happens, you need to become the voice. You don't need a real station. Find anything that can send a signal, even if it just reaches the next block. A ham set. A walkie-talkie rigged with a car battery. A kid's toy radio modified by someone who knows how wires work. Sit with it. Talk into it. Tell the people near you what you see, what you've learned, how to stay alive. Let them hear a human voice. Because the more human voices there are cutting through this quiet, the less room there is for the dark to move. The generator is starting to whine again. There's a higher pitch in the hum that wasn't there before, like metal scraping inside its own lungs. The lights are steady for now, but I can tell this won't last forever. I can feel the way the energy is thinning. The reflections in the console are pulsing softly like slow heartbeats. I'll stay here as long as I can. I'll finish this story, even if it tears my throat raw. I'll walk with you through the worst of it and try to point toward something like an end, or at least a direction. We're not done yet. Not tonight. The generator has started making a soft grinding sound each time it tries to cycle, like something inside is wearing down layer by layer. It hasn't fully cut out yet, but the dips are lasting longer, and every dip sends this pulse of cold through the room. I think the shadows feel each drop like a heartbeat slowing down. It feels like the whole world is holding its breath, waiting for the moment the power gives out completely so the dark can finish pressing through whatever thin barriers are left between us and it. I keep touching the desk with the tips of my fingers just to keep myself grounded, but the surface feels colder now, almost damp. Maybe it's just the air, or maybe the humidity in this room is changing, or maybe the booth is starting to breathe with the darkness the same way the reflections do. There's a faint thumping sound coming from the roof again. Slow, heavy, not as steady as before, almost like something wounded dragging itself closer. I flinch every time the ceiling creaks. I don't know if the thing up there is getting weaker or stronger, but whatever it is, it hasn't left the building. It's been circling the rooftop for hours now, like it's waiting for the generator to die. Maybe the power pushes it back. Maybe it's drawn to it but can't feed on it directly. I don't know. I wish I understood the rules of whatever these things are, but the more I try to put logic around them, the less sense everything makes. A few minutes ago, I heard something new. A deep, distant groaning noise from somewhere beyond the river. It echoed over the water like a pressure wave. Not a human scream, not a mechanical collapse. Something lower, longer, like the sound of a massive object shifting its weight or stretching its body. The windows rattled, just slightly, and the blinds swayed even though there's no wind. I can't get the sound out of my head. It reminded me of a whale calling underwater, except twisted and slowed down until every part of it felt wrong. If the shadows are on the ground and in reflections, then what is that sound in the sky? I don't know how much of the city still exists in a way we'd recognize. When I looked through the blinds earlier, something on the street caught my eye. Not movement this time, but stillness. A stillness so absolute it didn't look real. At the corner of 2nd and Walnut, there's a traffic light. The metal pole is still standing, but the lights aren't working. What struck me wasn't the dead signal, it was the way the dark around the pole was moving. Slowly, like thick smoke curling around metal, except there was no fire, no heat, just shifting shadow, swirling in slow circles around the base like water draining. I think the shadows are collecting. I think they're gathering mass or strength, or maybe just waiting for darkness to reach some kind of peak. The fact that we still have any light at all in here might be the only reason they haven't closed in fully. There's a noise I've heard 3 times now, always faint, always from the hallway. A soft clicking, almost like teeth tapping together. Not fast, slow, almost thoughtful, like something working its jaw just to feel the movement. Each time I hear it, the reflection in the console deepens for a second, as if something moves closer on the other side. The clicking stops when I talk louder. It starts again when I get tired or when my voice drops. I don't want to test what happens if I stop talking completely. The worst part is that the reflections aren't just showing shapes anymore. They're showing attempts at form. I caught something earlier in the corner of the console screen. A warped, shadowy outline of a face. Not a human face. Something too long, too smooth, with no real features. Like whatever's behind the glass is trying to shape itself but doesn't understand how faces work. The moment the lights flickered, the shape twitched and smeared like a hand dragging across wet paint. I jerked back so fast the chair scraped the floor. When I leaned in again, the face was gone, but the impression of it stuck in my mind, like the memory of something whispering too close to your ear. I think they're learning, or trying to. At some point, I noticed something else, something I haven't said out loud until now. The reflections don't just move when the lights dim. They move when my thoughts drift. When I zone out, even for a moment, it's like they feel the mental quiet and take it as an opening. When I stay sharp, scanning the room and thinking actively, The shadows seem to hesitate. But the moment my mind floats, when I start imagining the street outside or thinking about my childhood or even remembering someone's face, the reflections pulse. It makes me wonder if these things don't just feed on electricity. Maybe they feed on focus, on attention, on consciousness. Maybe thoughts are a kind of energy too, and when our minds get tired and the borders soften, something on the other side finds it easier to slip through. My thoughts keep drifting toward my family. My sister, last texting me from Pittsburgh, telling me the lights were flickering and the air felt weird. My mother, who lives in a quieter town up north, probably sitting in a dark room with her radio turned to whatever static she can find. I keep imagining her in her old living room, bundled under 3 blankets, staring at the dark windows and trying not to see anything move in the glass. She never liked storms or loud nights. This must feel like the world is ending for her, and maybe it is. I try not to let my voice shake when I think about her listening, but sometimes it slips. I hope to God she isn't staring too close at any reflections. Earlier, I felt the building shift again, just a small tremor, like something brushed against the foundation. Then something clattered in the stairwell, not falling but rolling. I imagined something dragging a metal pole or a tool handle behind it as it moved. The stairwell door doesn't have a lock. It just has one of those simple mechanisms that clicks shut. If something pushes it, it'll open. I shoved a chair under the handle earlier, but I don't know how long that will hold. The chair is old. The door is hollow. If anything decides the door is worth testing again, the chair won't stop it. I can't get this one image out of my head, even though I wish I could. When I stepped into the hallway earlier, before I lost my nerve, I saw something on the floor near the far office. At first I thought it was just a dark patch from the emergency light flicker, but then it rippled, just once. A slow, gentle ripple, like a puddle disturbed by a single drop. Except there was no water. The floor was dry. The ripple moved outward across the tiles and stopped halfway before fading. It didn't make sense. Floors don't ripple, but that one did. Maybe the shadows aren't just on surfaces. Maybe they're beneath them now, pushing upward in places where the world is thinnest. Outside, something just distorted the sky again. A slow wave across the darkness, like the clouds flexed. I heard a low hum at the same time, deep enough to vibrate the window glass. It lasted about 6 seconds before fading. After it faded, something strange happened. The reflections in the room went blank for a moment. Completely blank, like the darkness behind the glass blinked. And then the shapes returned a little sharper, a little more focused. I don't know if that hum was them communicating or shifting or feeding, but it affected everything, right down to the outline of my hands on the console. I don't like the feeling that something out there, something enormous, is moving above the clouds. Maybe the small shapes are just pieces of something larger. Maybe the reflections aren't individual entities but fragments of a bigger presence leaking through whatever crack opened between our world and whatever is on the other side. If that hum was the bigger thing adjusting itself, then we're not dealing with 1,000 small shadows. We're dealing with one shadow that has 1,000 fingertips touching our world at once. I'm trying to prepare myself for what comes next, for the end of this night, whatever form it takes. I know we're close to something, maybe a collapse, maybe a turning point, maybe a moment where this darkness peaks and either consumes everything or gets forced back by something we haven't seen yet. A dawn, maybe, if dawn can still break through a sky like this. Or maybe human resilience will matter in a way we haven't understood yet. People might be doing more out there in the dark than I can see from this booth. I think of the old man teaching the younger one how to siphon water. I think of the woman on the 3rd floor covering her windows one by one. I think of the kids who must be huddled in basements with their parents whispering them awake so they don't drift off into the dark. I think of neighbors sharing heat from a stove, listening to me on a cracked radio with the antenna bent sideways. People are pulling together in ways they never would have yesterday. That has to count for something. It's quiet again outside the door. Too quiet. The clicking stopped. The scraping faded. Even the slow, dragging sound on the roof has paused. I don't think that's a good sign. Silence means they're waiting for something. Listening. Preparing. The lights just dipped for a full second. A long, heavy second. In that moment, something pressed against the outside of the booth window. I didn't see it fully. I only saw the silhouette stretch across the blinds. A tall shape, thin, arched. The head leaned forward slowly, like it was trying to listen through the glass. When the lights came back, the silhouette stayed for a moment before sinking downward, like it melted into the floor. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm scared. More scared than I've ever been. But I'm not done. Not until this generator gives its last breath. We are getting close to something. An end. Turning. Whatever this story becomes in part 9, it will come from this moment of stillness before the final push of the dark. Hold on. Stay awake. Cover the reflections. Keep each other breathing. I don't know if this generator is holding on out of luck or out of stubbornness, but every time it coughs I feel the walls tighten. The shadows in the corners pulse with every dip like they're breathing in sync with the machine. The hum is weaker now, thin, loose, like the wires are fading. I keep touching the metal side of the desk just to feel something real. It's colder than it should be. My breath fogs heavier each time I exhale. I can feel the tiredness trying to drag me under like a hand on the back of my neck. I've been fighting sleep for so long I don't even know what time means anymore. My eyes burn, but I force them open because every time they close the reflections twitch like they're waiting for me to slip. Something happened a few minutes ago. Something I don't understand, but I need to tell you. The ceiling trembled again, but not from footsteps this time. It felt like the whole building shifted sideways for just an inch, like an enormous pressure wave rolled through the sky and hit everything at once. The lights flickered so hard they almost blew. During that split second of dimness, I saw the reflections in the console come alive all at once. Not slowly, fast. All the dark spots deepened, like wells opening. Shapes pulled upward as if being lifted by invisible strings. Felt like the entire world inhaled. When the lights came back, everything froze, almost like the shadows were caught mid-step. They clung to the edges of the reflection for a moment before sinking back, slower this time. Whatever's happening outside is reaching some kind of peak. I don't think they're hiding anymore. I think they're gathering. The sky hasn't changed color since this started. No hint of dawn. No silver lining. Just that thick, low blackness. But there's something different in it now. The darkness keeps pulsing with faint ripples that move across the entire sky, like a huge shape is shifting behind it. If the small shadows inside the reflections are pieces, then the sky is the whole body. I think we've been dealing with fragments of something much larger, like an ocean that's finally pulling the tide inward. A little earlier, I forced myself to look out the blinds again, even though everything in my body screamed not to. The street outside doesn't even look like a street anymore. The shadows from buildings stretch upward like claws reaching for the clouds. The windows along the block are deeper than before, like openings into something hollow instead of rooms. And the few shapes I thought were people earlier, they're gone. Not replaced, just gone. No bodies, no noise, no movement, just absence. And the silence feels so heavy it makes the air vibrate. I don't know what it means that the reflections are stronger now. The shapes inside them look more defined. Still wrong, but clearer. The long arms, the bent heads, The slow, deliberate movements. They are not frantic. They are not panicked. They are acting like something waiting for a signal. Something patient. Something ancient. I think the silence outside is their signal. My thoughts drifted for a moment just now, just a few seconds, and in that moment I saw something in the reflection that I've never seen before. A full silhouette. Almost human. Almost. It leaned forward, its long arms hanging low like they didn't have bones. Its head tilted toward me like it was listening. And in that split second, I felt something cold graze the back of my neck. Not physically, but inside my mind. Like a whisper of something pressing against the thin wall between consciousness and whatever they are. I jerked awake so hard my elbow slammed the console. The lights buzzed, and the reflection snapped back to its usual half-formed shapes. I think they're close. Too close. Close enough that if this generator dies, there won't be anything left to hold them back. Not just from the booth. From everywhere. But here's the thing. I'm not alone tonight. Not really. I know I can't hear them, but I know people are out there listening to this. I know someone out there is sitting in a small room with a candle near their feet, holding onto a kid who's barely keeping their eyes open. I know there's someone in a garage right now turning a cracked radio dial back and forth, trying to keep my voice steady through static that's probably swallowing half of what I say. I know someone is standing in their kitchen with every mirror covered by a towel, listening to me because it's the only human sound they trust. I've been thinking a lot about resilience. The kind that looks like nothing from the outside but matters more than anything. The way people share blankets even when they're cold themselves. The way old knowledge suddenly becomes gold. How to boil water safely. How to start a fire in a metal pan. How to block drafts with cushions and blankets. The way someone still finds enough calm to show another person how to crank a radio at a steady pace. The way someone whispers, "Stay with me," just to keep another human mind awake in the dark. This thing we're facing, it's huge. Bigger than cities. Bigger than countries. Bigger than anything anyone ever planned for. But the one thing it doesn't have is what we have. Stubbornness. That strange, messy, human refusal to give up even when the sky breaks and the power dies and the world forgets how to be bright. I don't know how long I've been sitting here. My hands are numb. My voice feels thin. The air is freezing near the floor. I keep my feet up on the chair legs because I swear something cold is brushing the tiles. The reflections are thick now, like ink swirling under glass. They follow every movement I make. I know they're watching. I know they're waiting. But I'm watching too. I'm not giving them silence. I'm not giving them stillness. I'm not giving them the outline of someone who gave up. Something just hit the roof. Not the crawling sound from before. This was heavy. Like something big landed on top of the building. Then a long creak spread across the ceiling, slow and painful, like metal bending under weight. The blinds rattled. Dust fell from the vent. I held my breath, waiting for something to break through. Didn't. Instead, the entire building exhaled. A long, low groan ran through the walls, almost like the structure itself was bracing. And then the sky changed. The darkness behind the clouds shifted from pitch black to something with a faint hint of motion. A thinning, a tremor, and then, in the far distance, so faint I almost didn't believe it, I saw a dim, pale line on the horizon. Not bright, not sunrise, but something like the outline of light trying to push through a thick blanket. Like dawn punching weakly at the edge of a sealed world. The shadows in the reflections reacted instantly. They jerked, their shapes flickering like someone had ripped a thread out of their world. One of the silhouettes in the console stretched upward unnaturally, reaching toward the ceiling as if trying to cling onto the dark. This shape twisted so fast the reflection blurred. Then it snapped back and writhed like it was being pulled by something it didn't want to follow. The hum of the generator spiked, higher than before. Not a failure, a surge. The lights brightened for just a second, just long enough for the reflections to flatten into simple shadows before deepening again. That line on the horizon might be nothing. It might be a trick. It might be false dawn or a flaw in the dark sky. But whatever it is, the shadows didn't like it. They reacted like something threatened them. And that means something matters. Something outside. Something bigger than me sitting in this room. Something older than the darkness trying to break through. There's a chance, small, fragile, flickering like a candle someone shields with their hands. But it's a chance. The cracking on the door has started again. Not soft this time. Hard, like something ramming into it. Slowly, testing the wood. The chair under the handle slid an inch when I wasn't looking. The scratches under the door are louder. Whatever is out there is getting desperate. The reflections are twitching violently. They're losing their smooth movements, losing control. The shapes lunge toward the glass, then shrink back. They're being pulled in two directions. I don't know what's happening outside this building, but something is changing the balance. Something is pulling at the darkness the same way the darkness pulls at us. Maybe dawn is real. Maybe it's breaking through whatever pulled the world into night. Maybe somewhere far away, someone did something. Burned enough light, sent out enough power, or found a way to hold the shadows back long enough for the sky to crack open. Or maybe this is natural, light fighting through on its own. I don't know, but the shadows do. They're panicking. I can feel it. If that line grows, if dawn really comes back, if even a sliver of sunlight hits this city, maybe the darkness will peel back enough for people to move again. For radios to catch real signals. For people to check on each other. For families to come out of closets and basements and breathe air that doesn't taste like fear. The door trembled again. Harder. I can see the wood flex. The chair legs scraped. I don't have much time, but I want to leave something clear before anything else happens. You survived this night. You didn't fall asleep. You didn't let the reflections shape you. You pushed back the silence. You stayed awake when the dark wanted your thoughts. You covered the mirrors. You whispered to the people next to you. You kept your outline from becoming theirs. That matters. That changed something. Because the moment the sky cracked even a little, the shadows recoiled like the light burned them. If you're hearing me now, even through static, even through a weak signal bouncing off dead towers, you made it through the worst night this world has ever seen. When the light comes, even if it's faint, take it slow. Check each room before entering. Uncover windows carefully. Don't stare directly at reflections yet. Let the world warm. Let the darkness thin. Let the silence shift away. Move toward each other, not alone. Share heat. Share food. Share old stories if you have to. Anything to keep your minds in the light. And if the sun returns fully, if the sky breaks open instead of closing again, then today becomes a beginning, not an ending. I don't know if I'll be here when the sun rises. The door is shaking harder now. Something is pressing against the frame, pushing slowly, learning the pressure points. The reflections are shredding themselves, flailing like torn cloth underwater. The horizon line is brighter, a little more than before. Whatever happens to me in this booth, whatever pushes through that door or pulls itself out of the reflections, I need you to look toward the light when it comes. You stayed alive through a night built to break you. If the sun rises, so do you. And if this is my last broadcast, then take these last words with you like a small flame cupped in your hands. Stay awake, stay human, and when the light calls, follow it. This is Shane Walker on 98.4 FM. If the sun rises, I'll try to say something again. If not, just know you weren't alone in the dark.